You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Jaws is a movie that needs no introduction. Released in 1975, it revolutionized the film industry, creating the modern summer blockbuster and cementing Steven Spielberg's status as one of Hollywood's most visionary directors. The film's suspense, pacing, and iconic score by John Williams have made it one of the most celebrated thrillers in cinema history. But one of its most memorable moments, the famous line, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," wasn't in the script. The off-the-cuff remark by Roy Scheider became one of the most quoted lines in film history. Today, we'll explore the unexpected story behind this line, the chaotic production of Jaws, and surprising behind-the-scenes facts. The origins of "You're gonna need a bigger boat."
Shut off that engine.
That's a 20-footer.
25.
The famous line, delivered by Roy Scheider's character, Chief Martin Brody, happens at one of Jaws' most intense moments. As Brody casually tosses Chum into the ocean, a monstrous great white suddenly bursts from the water, its size more terrifying than anything imagined. The shock on Brody's face is real. As he backs away into the cabin, he mutters those now legendary words to Quint, the grizzled shark hunter played by Robert Shaw. It's a moment that perfectly captures the mix of horror and humor that Jaws so effortlessly balances, giving audiences a bit of levity right in the middle of a terrifying reveal. While the line fits the scene seamlessly, it was never in the script. Instead, it was the result of on-set frustration and a long-running joke among the Jaws crew. Screenwriter Carl Gottlieb, who was deeply involved in the film's day-to-day operations, later explained that the phrase had become a common refrain among the cast and crew due to the constraints imposed by the producers. The film's producers, Richard Zanuck and David Brown, had kept a tight grip on the budget, making decisions that many on the set felt were impractical. One of these decisions was their refusal to provide a larger support boat to house the equipment and crew. This led to repeated difficulties during the ocean-based production. The primary barge used to transport equipment and feed the crew was sarcastically dubbed the SS Garage Sail due to its cramped, disorganized state. It was too small to accommodate everything needed for such a complex shoot, making for constant logistical challenges. The lack of space meant that when something went wrong, it often couldn't be fixed quickly, leading to delays, frustration, and a general feeling of exasperation. Whenever a problem arose, whether it was a malfunctioning camera, a delayed lunch, or an unexpected setback, someone on set would mutter, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." Roy Scheider found the joke particularly funny and began slipping the line into various takes. It was a natural fit for his character, as Brody was the everyman of the trio, completely out of his depth compared to hardened shark hunter Quint and the intellectual oceanographer Hooper. While Scheider tried the line multiple times in different scenes, Spielberg and editor Verna Feuds decided that the best placement was right after the shocking full reveal of the shark. The moment was already terrifying, but Scheider's delivery added just the right amount of humor, making the scene unforgettable. What started as a behind-the-scenes joke became one of the most quoted lines in movie history. Chaotic and troubled production.
The studio kept saying, you have to finish the picture before this potential strike.
They wanted to finish shooting by June 15th.
And that meant everything was rushed.
Steven was getting very nervous about all of this and the strike deadline. So Joe or somebody tipped me off and said, Steven's coming over to back away from the picture.
Filming Jaws was anything but smooth sailing. The production faced a seemingly endless stream of obstacles, from technical failures to cast tensions and unpredictable weather. While Spielberg had grand visions for his first major studio film, he quickly found himself in the midst of one of the most challenging shoots in Hollywood history. One of the biggest problems was, of course, the mechanical shark. The Great White, nicknamed Bruce after Spielberg's lawyer, was supposed to be the terrifying centerpiece of the film. But the shark was a technological nightmare. 3 versions of Bruce were built, each designed for different types of shots. One for left side shots, one for right side shots, and one with a full body appearance. The crew quickly discovered a massive flaw: none of these models had been tested in salt water. As soon as filming began, the salt corroded the machinery, causing endless breakdowns. Because the shark was unreliable, Spielberg had to find creative ways to shoot the film without actually showing it. This led to one of the film's most brilliant storytelling choices, keeping the shark largely unseen for the first half of the movie. Instead of relying on visuals, Spielberg let tension build through suggestion, using John Williams' now legendary score to signal the shark's presence. The end result was a film that was far scarier than if the shark had been visible from the beginning. Shooting on the open ocean presented its own set of nightmares. Unlike most films, which use studio-controlled water tanks for aquatic scenes, Jaws was shot on location in the waters off Martha's Vineyard. This meant dealing with real waves, shifting tides, and boats that refused to stay in place. Filming often had to be halted because an unexpected boat or shifting horizon would ruin a shot. Camera equipment was constantly at risk of water damage, and several crew members, including Spielberg, suffered from seasickness. All of these contributed to a production that ran well over budget and schedule. Behind-the-scenes tensions and feuds.
I got the creme de la creme. Right here, hold on. Hey, see that?
You're wearing a sweater.
Right there. Mary Ellen Moffat. She broke my heart.
While the film's three leads had undeniable on-screen chemistry, things weren't always smooth behind the scenes, particularly between Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw. The tension between their characters, Hooper and Quint, wasn't just good acting, it was fueled by real-life animosity. Shaw, known for his heavy drinking, had a habit of belittling Dreyfuss on set. He would mock him in front of the crew and often went out of his way to make Dreyfuss uncomfortable. The conflict reached a boiling point when Shaw, in one of his drunken moods, lamented that he wished he could quit drinking. Frustrated, Dreyfuss grabbed Shaw's drink and threw it into the ocean, sending shockwaves through the crew. While Shaw could be difficult to work with, he was also incredibly professional when sober. This was best seen during his unforgettable USS Indianapolis monologue, one of the film's most powerful moments. His first attempt at the speech was unusable because he'd been drinking heavily, slurring his words and struggling to get through the lines. Regretting his mistake, he returned the next day sober and delivered the monologue in a single take, producing one of the greatest performances in cinematic history.
So 1,100 men went in the war. 316 men come out. The Sharks took the rest June the 29th, 1945. Anyway, we delivered the bomb.
Other famous improvised moments.
I had this idea at one point just to have, Richard watching Robert polishing off an entire can of beer, and then Quint crushes the can in his hand. I said, take your styrofoam cup of coffee and crush the styrofoam.
"You're gonna need a bigger boat" wasn't the only unscripted line that made its way into Jaws. Spielberg encouraged his actors to experiment with their dialogue, leading to several other iconic moments. One is Robert Shaw's quip to Brody's wife, Ellen, early on. "Here lies the body of Mary Lee, died at the age of 103. For 15 years she kept her virginity, she never once complained." This was completely off the cuff, with Spielberg simply instructing Shaw to annoy Ellen during the scene. The line worked so well, it stayed in the final cut. The film's climactic moment, where Brody shoots the shark, was also a deviation from the original script. In Peter Benchley's novel, the shark simply succumbs to his injuries and dies, but Spielberg wanted a more dramatic and satisfying conclusion. The idea of an exploding oxygen tank was scientifically dubious, but provided a thrilling end to the film. The enduring legacy of Jaws.
I'm always really, grateful when anybody, especially a young director, comes over to me and tells me that they were in some way strangely influenced by Jaws, and I say, well, great, you're part of our club then, you got it.
Nearly 50 years after its release, Jaws remains one of the most influential films ever made. It reshaped Hollywood by launching the modern summer blockbuster, proving that a well-marketed, widely released film could dominate theaters and become a cultural event. Before Jaws, studios typically released their biggest films in the winter, believing summer audiences were too preoccupied with outdoor activities. But the film's enormous success in the summer of '75 changed that thinking. setting the stage for the high-stakes blockbuster seasons that define the industry today. Beyond its industry-changing impact, Jaws set new standards for suspense and storytelling. Spielberg's decision to withhold the full reveal of the shark, relying instead on the score and clever cinematography, demonstrated the power of suggestion in horror. The film's ability to build tension, keeping audiences glued to their seats without over-relying on visual effects, became a blueprint for thrillers and monster movies that followed. Now it's time to hear from you. What's your favorite moment in Jaws? Let us know in the comments section below.